Welcome to Feeling Seen, the podcast about the movies that make us feel seen. Today, for the first time in Feeling Seen history, we are seeing double. Our co-hosts, you heard that right, co-hosts, are a united brain trust in filmmaking, the dynamic directing duo of Dan Berk and Robert Bobby Olsen. For the past 10 years, Berk and Olsen have teamed up to bring you some amazing horrors and thrillers. You may have seen their directorial debut, Body, their black comedy horror, Villains, or the science fiction thriller, Significant Other. Their most recent collaboration is in theaters right now. It is them at, I would say, their biggest and most bombastic yet. It is called Novocaine, starring Jack Quaid as Nathan Kane, a mild-mannered introvert with a rare disorder, congenital insensitivity to pain, CIP, who must rescue the girl of his dreams who has been taken hostage in a bank robbery. The bank they both work at, actually. The film is action-packed with an incredible cast. There's Quaid, Amber Mid-Thunder, and Ray Nicholson. This is a hot on the come-up little ensemble. Couldn't be more excited about Nicholson these days. And Mid-Thunder, a star. Quaid, God, that guy wins me over every time. Dan and Bobby join us to talk about Novocaine, movie posters, and an unlikely duo from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Next stop, Station! Oh, and a brief appearance from Bobby Olsen's beautiful dog, Nala. Let's get into it. Dan Berk and Robert Olsen, what else did the people need to know about you before we get started here today?
That's a lot. Yeah, you nailed most of it there.
Yeah, that is very. Although it is, I know it's your first time doing two guests. We are very similar looking. We're both 6 foot plus tall, leggy brunettes. And
yes, do introduce yourselves separately so that people can track the voices.
Sure. This voice is Dan.
Yes, and this voice is Robert, but you can call me Bobby.
Okay, Bobby, got it. I didn't want to assume informality, so I thank you for setting us on a path.
Of course, yeah.
He only lets friends call him Bobby, so this is a big step, Jordan.
It's true.
Well, anybody, with my passion for movie posters, which is how we started our conversation pre-record, I feel like we've known each other for ages. If we've begun by talking about, if it was the end of the interview instead of the beginning, I would have walked you guys around on the Zoom and given you the virtual tour of my posters because I just get excited and have done that to people on various occasions.
I do miss at my college dorm room, which was the last place where I could really have movie posters. Like again, where I live now, my apartment's just too small, and my wife has too good of taste.
What did we have?
I had in my college dorm room, I had an awesome like Brazil poster that was the one with his like brain exploding, and then I also had a blank check poster.
Nice. What? Wow. A dazzle. I think I brought my Spawn movie poster to my college dorm room.
Classic.
It's so funny. I was going to talk about Spawn later on just because it like it's so funny because my memories of like the scenes in hell kind of get mixed up between Spawn and Bill and Ted's. Like going back and watching it again, I was like, oh, wait, that's from Bill and Ted's, not Spawn.
The movie posters I had in my room when I was in like high school, it was Labyrinth, Spawn, and Leonardo DiCaprio, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet.
Dude, that's a great lineup. What a great triple feature. You should book that somewhere.
A dazzling spectrum. Coming to a repertory theater near you.
Yeah, those 3 movies playing at the Vista would sell out like 3 nights in a row.
I love it. Those are huge like theater kid vibes movies for sure.
Well, I will get us started in our conversation by let's kick it off with Novocaine. And I've read you guys talking about the notion of like sticky concepts, like a lot of scripts passing in front of you. What are the sticky concepts that come to you that a studio will want to get behind, that people will really remember? What was it about the sticky concept of Novocaine that got you guys into this, where it was like this is how we want to spend the next several years of our lives working?
So basically, we've been wanting to make an action movie for a long time. It's a tough genre to just start with. It's really hard to have your first feature be an action movie or something like that. And so we were, always wanted to do it because that was one of our favorite genres growing up. And yet at the same time, I think if you've seen any of our other films, like there's always like a little twist on the genre or a genre blend or something. And so we didn't want to just do any old action movie, just some random programmer or whatever. And so it had to be a concept that felt really unique to us. And so, obviously the stickiness of it is apparent. You know, it's just a guy who can't feel pain going to rescue the woman he loves. But where it really shines is in the fight scenes themselves, because they just don't look like any other fight scenes that you're used to seeing in an action movie, because your protagonist doesn't know how to fight. And so you're used to watching John Wick kick everybody's ass, or whoever your protagonist is, that they usually have some background and they are an incredible fighter and they're fighting 3 people at once and all this stuff. And so what drew us to this is that the fight scenes are just so funky, because your main character is getting their ass kicked for the vast majority of the fight until the very end, when he comes up with a clever way to win.
Yeah, and I think that's like the heart of the stickiness, is just when it's an unlikely character, you know, being thrown into this. Like if you look at any of those programmers, this whole sort of like generic, you know, wash of action movies that come out and often make money, and we're fans of. But for us to really engage with, you know, those movies all have very likely protagonists. You know, it's like really muscular, strong, hyper masculine dudes going around and kicking ass. Like that's cool, but it doesn't go against the grain at all. Like the character is not in conflict with the world by default, which is something we kind of need for something like this to get excited.
I gotta say, I really don't like a Ted Mosby, like a central kind of mealy mouthed guy. Jack Quaid is literally the only man who can play that like self-deprecating kind, like just sort of mincing personality, and I am charmed by it. He has hacked the source code of that character for me. It's probably biggest hater, and I'm like, serve it up. Like give me the boys for hours on end. Give me Novocaine. Like give me Scream 5. Give me Companion. I am bought in for the guy every time on it. What is the magic of it with him? You guys have seen it like so up close. How is he doing this in like this well-worn kind of archetype in such an like somehow novel, engaging way?
Yeah, the magic is that he is genuinely the sweetest, most down-to-earth man you will ever meet, and the characters he's playing, they're so earnest and likable because he is so earnest and likable. And that hacking of the source code that you're talking about only happens like once a generation, maybe twice if you're lucky. And we used to have Tom Hanks who did that, right? Wouldn't you agree? He also hacked the source code. Maybe John Cusack on a good day. But we don't have it in this generation, except now we do. We've realized, Bobby and I just learned that we did. And, you know, we had suspicions after seeing him in The Boys that he had that. And that's why we cast him in this. That's why when we were, you know, rewriting the script after we came on, we wrote it with Jack in mind, and we were lucky enough to get him. But after working with him, like I would bet my pinkies that he is going to be Tom Hanks for our generation. And he has that 4-quadrant, just eminent likability that you can't not be charmed by him. It's impossible to avoid it.
Well, and I think a lot of it it comes really naturally to him because, like Dan said, that is what he's like. You know, I think when you see a different actor trying to play a role like that and kind of create a persona that's like that, you feel the distance, you feel how fake that is, you know, but because that's what he's like, it comes through and it rings true. And he just has this like ability to make whoever he's sitting across from feel so comfortable. And I think that that's something that when you're watching him, you know, on camera, it's really hard not to like him. I mean, he's saving the fucking cat with every sentence that comes out of his mouth, because he's just like that sweet of a person, you know? And again, you can't fake that, you know? And so you either have it or you don't. And like Dan said, it's a rare thing. So, you know, we're just happy that he's that he's around, because we do think that the industry was in need of somebody like him. And I honestly have no fucking idea how, sorry, I don't know if I want to swear.
No, you absolutely, say whatever you like. Yeah.
No fucking idea how he's not more of an asshole or something. Like, I mean, he, you know, to have, you know, to grow up with, you know, famous parents like that and somehow still maintain this grounded sensibility. And like, he's not just like, it's not an act. Like he is about that life.
I am going to bring up two more of your key actors in this because I must ask about them later in this conversation. But for now, I will not delay any longer the getting to of the character pick for this. First time we've had two people doing this at the same time. Tell me what your guys' united character choice was and your reasoning behind it today.
Okay, so we have chosen Station from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey because we felt like we had to pick
Station.
We felt like we had to pick Station. Station means everything, so you can just say Station.
Station was proto Groot. Like before we had
exactly.
Groot, we had Station, and Station is everything and anything.
Yes. Obviously, with two people, it's a challenge to pick one character that you felt seen by. So we sort of just selected a character that we felt sort of was emblematic of our approach to filmmaking. There are two of us. Station is the most talented scientist in the universe, an engineer, and can build something from nothing. And there's two identical little ones, and then but then when they really have to get down to business, they jump into each other, form a protoplasmic goo, and then from that goo grows a big Station who can do stuff. And that just feels like how we think about ourselves, which is that we don't really know where we'd be without each other, but we know that we are the best creative actors when we are working together, you know, and we have to come together when we're trying to really accomplish something. Like, you know, we can each throw out ideas and this and that, and there will be disagreements, and there will be, you know, we'll forge ideas through that. But it's always when we, like, you know, are together that the best work is done.
When I saw the character, I was like, oh my God, Station. Like, I cannot wait to find out. We get into this, and then revisiting Bogus Journey, Bill and Ted in their Bogus Journey, this is the one where they go to hell. We start out in the future that they have formed into an art utopia. And we see Professor George Carlin talking to a class of students who are very much kind of molded in the image of Bill and Ted. And then a baddie, Denomalos, shows up in this future and is like, I'm going to unmake everything Bill and Ted ever did by sending evil robot Bill and Ted's back to our present at the time the movie would have come out, and they're going to kill Bill and Ted. And so Bill and Ted die, they go to hell, they win a best of 7 round of board games with Death, who brings them to God, who they go to God and they're like, hey, we need help to beat these guys, this is what's going on. And God just says Station and leads them to these great scientists who, as you said, separately geniuses, and then they form into a Station Megazord to affect their intellectual, like, mind meld into an actionable giant thing that then creates the work that they have thought of together.
Station!
That is an incredible summation. I can't believe you just did that off the top of your dome.
I like imagining that was you pitching the studio initially on the idea and just being like, so what do you think?
Sticky concept. Sticky concept.
Yeah, it's definitely sticky.
I also just want to note that we did not identify with them because we are the best scientists in the universe. Like, that was the one thing I watched. I was like, ooh, I don't want to seem haughty here.
Or perhaps because you have a shared large Martian butt between the two of you.
Right. Yeah, we have like a butt crack that goes up to the base of our skull. Yeah, that's exactly it.
I also want to note that in rewatching this movie, it's funny because we were talking about Hellraiser on a different podcast yesterday, and we were talking about how good the effects were, the practical effects, and like the effects in this movie were like really good. The reveal of the fact that they're android Bill and Ted's,
that is as good as anything in Mission Impossible.
That's as good as, I was just gonna say, that's a almost better effect than Tom Cruise pulling his skin off. Like, it makes no sense. I don't know how they
when
did
they're
it.
like taking their heads off to dunk them and stuff. So it's like, but it's funny because like, then there's like a handful of visual effects that are like so whack. It's like old school, like Twin Peaks like effects or something. Like, it's just like this really weird like morph effects that looks horrible. But then you look at the rest of the movie and like the effects all the practical effects are incredible. Like the costumes are incredible. The set design, like when they're in hell and they're in that kind of like, you know, the barracks with the drill instructor guy, and it kind of goes off to a vanishing point.
Oh my God.
All of those like warped bunk beds. Like,
that whole sequence was like genuine like horror. That felt
my
like
jaw was agape watching that
Smile.
last night. I was like, wait a minute. Like I've always enjoyed these movies, but like, you know, you get older, you watch things differently, and seeing this one for the first time in a while, it was like, my God, this is so effective. This looks
It's so scary.
good.
And the bunny and stuff, it's really genuinely scary. Basically, anything where they were trying to use, because it was 1991. I guess they were probably making these decisions about VFX and whatnot in 1990. So it's like anything where they were using a computer and they were like, look, I got this cool new effect I could do. And that obviously looks like shit. But most of the stuff is practical. And I think they were really like flexing on the practical effects of this movie. Because also like the black and white roto stuff, you know, of when they're like in hell, when they're, you know, dead, but they escape the sort of desert area. And then anyhow, okay, sorry, back to station.
No. And I'm glad you guys brought this stuff up, because like more and more, like I truly think, like I don't think I'm operating from a sense of nostalgia, but I truly think like the further I get from it, and probably the older I get, like the 90s has really settled in for me as perhaps the greatest time ever in movies, maybe.
We always talk about that.
And I think such a big part of that for me is it was the last point before we couldn't default to digital. It was too busted still. It wasn't quite there. Like everything kind of had to be practical, and it was the zenith of the skill and craft and artisanship of practical effects that we had ever come to before we could paint over it digitally.
Yes.
And so everything is real. You're watching The Adventures of Baron Munchausen right before the turnover to the 90s. Everything is real. You're watching the Schumacher Batman. Everything is real. And it just feels so good to watch things that are, I think maybe as we get more and more inundated with AI slop, I find even more that the emotional resonance of seeing something where everything I know is tangible really means something to me.
Well, and it makes it so that it lasts longer. It holds up. So you can like go and look at it. It looks exactly the same. Whereas when you have like, as soon as you're dealing with like something that's computer generated, there's going to be better technology 5 years later. And so when you go back, it's going to, you know, look a little shitty compared. But like, you know, when you do it all practical, like I think perhaps at the time, maybe somebody might feel like, oh, that looks like a costume or that looks fake or something. But the fact that it is like physically there, you know, not only helps with what it looks like, but I think informs like the performances, you know, like I think nowadays you have so many movies where people are just like acting against one another on a green screen, you know, or they're like talking to a tennis ball on a pole instead of like, you know, a guy in a sweaty costume. And it's like, you know, I think that hurts performances too. So yeah, I mean, that's in general, I thought like the movie itself, just like, I thought it like it all in all kind of like held up, you know, save for like a couple cringy, like homophobic jokes here and there.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, what you're always going to run into.
I was like, oh,
yeah,
I couldn't
like
believe that they were
dropping a couple F-bombs in there. But outside of that, like, you know, a lot of the jokes in the movie they're almost like these like Marx Brothers, like play on words kind of thing. Like when he's like, well, you know, when Ted is talking about telling somebody that their girlfriends are from medieval England, and Bill kind of elbows them and he's like, sorry, medieval England, Iowa. Like that's just a good joke.
Yeah, totally. Well, also the like overlapping audio tracks that like is used really expertly with when they're both proposing, and the shot is dollying back and forth, and the different tracks are going in and out, and it's so
like squirrels
funny.
and gizzards.
And that's real. Like that's really hard to do what they did. That was one of the things I was like, oh, they're kind of flexing in this movie. Like they're going way above and beyond.
I wrote this myself. I wrote this last night. Elizabeth, Joanna, as I wander through this dark and lonely forest of life, surrounded by various beasts, bears, vipers, squirrels, not to mention small tree-growing lichen, woodpeckers,
Man-o-war,
T-rats,
starfish,
slugs,
blowfish,
toads,
catfish.
Gila monsters.
Oh no, that's freshwater.
The point is, I know we promised you a better life than this.
What I mean to say is, I realized when we took you out of England, we said the future held some really good stuff.
And all this stuff hasn't actually worked out the way we thought.
It will. We hope.
Like the jokes were hitting so hard, and that's like it's so funny because like 2 days ago I was listening to some podcast. Somebody was talking about how like Spielberg does that a lot. Like you know, in like Jurassic Park when they're taking the tour at the beginning through, once they get to the park, through the like lab or whatever, and there's like kind of two mini groups talking, and you're hearing the both audio tracks, and it's like a nice way to like bury like so not essential but somewhat important exposition, and it also makes the world feel more lived in, because that's what the real world is like. In movies it's like, this is the speaker, that's what you're hearing, everything else is just wah, 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 wah. But in the real world, like, you're in a coffee shop, you could hear 3 different conversations at once. And
so with that, like, another thing too, like, it's so fun getting to think of like characters watching these movies through the people who've brought these examples for, and like especially like something like the Station Martians, and something I'm keying into last night I was watching it. You have like the greatest scientists in the universe, these little Martians, the only kind of, besides death, like non-human characters in the movie. But when they're helping Bill and Ted solve their problem, what they need is a way to defeat the evil robot usses that are trying to ruin their lives. And you don't see them manifest like some sort of celestial super tool to make the robots that they end up producing for good Bill and Ted. They go to a hardware store and they raid the shelves. They take the available earthly materials as the greatest scientific minds in the universe, and they make things that robots end up looking more like Legos than these like elite advanced skin jobs from the future that Denomalos has presented to take over the world. And I wanted to hear from you guys about, like, I've read bits and interviews about talking about like that preparation, and how like you've encountered sometimes, like, if you've encountered problems that run up against like the logistics of what's available to you, feeling like I'm more excited even about the solution that we had to come up with than the original creative idea. And I wanted to hear about that sort of like Mark Duplass would call it, like the found material school of filmmaking, and working with what's in front of you, and those pragmatic considerations being being tantamount to creative considerations.
Yeah, so like I actually think that's a great little metaphor for what it's like making a movie, especially early on in your career, making like indie films, because a lot of times, like you said, you don't have the space age stuff. You have what's in the hardware store. And so you've got to find a way to make a movie. So for instance, when we made Body, our first feature, like nobody lets you direct a feature until you've directed a feature. And so
isn't that just a fucking trap of it? Exactly. And so we had to like make that movie happen. And so we're like, all right, what do we have? And so we went out and we found this, like, we had a friend of a friend of a friend whose parents were really wealthy, and they had this big giant mansion. And that guy really wanted to be a producer. And so we were like, okay, well, you can be a producer on this if we can shoot the movie in this big giant mansion. And so then we had a big giant mansion. And then it was like, okay, so what can we do to build the story to fit this? And so we literally in that project had a location before we had a concept, And so like those are the little tricks that you need to kind of, pull off. And then obviously there are tons of instances of that even later on, where you'll find out that this person is sick today. And so you have to suddenly figure out what you're going to shoot, And so there's a lot of things that you have to do, usually in concert with your AD, to kind of figure out, like, how do we fit this into this? Or we've got this, but but there's this other element that we thought we were going to have that's gone, or you order some piece, some prop or whatever, go up and it's not what you thought it was, so you have to be able to like adjust on the fly. And it's not until you're, later on in your directing career that, you can actually sit there and be like, we're not going to shoot today until this. Good luck trying that on like $1 million indie. Yeah.
I think the classic, like really practical, tangible example that has happened to us many times is you are running out of time in your day, don't want to go OT, you have 3 more setups on your shot list, and either you or your DP suggests, why don't we just do this as a long take oneer, let's just do it in the 2-shot and let the scene play that way. And then those are so often like they are interpreted by the audience as this really cool, deliberate decision. And it is a cool, deliberate decision, but it's often a product of necessity. But like we love when that happens, where it's like, because it's like a lot of times you always hear directors talking about it takes a while to get to this place, but like every scene you have to boil down, like, what is it really about? Who's important? Because of course your initial plan is, well, let's just get coverage of each of these actors. Let's get a wide, let's get a 2-shot. Maybe there's one cool dolly shot, whatever it is. But sometimes your scene is just about the guy really nervous while the other people are talking, and you could get away with it, and that's not something that we like to do. Like we don't like to plan that, to do that, but sometimes you're forced into that corner, and often it does create magic. It's just one of those fun things about filmmaking.
Nobody did that better than David Lynch, R.I.P.
Right.
Because he would just kind of find something and just go with it, and so that's why like so many of his projects have this like meandering dreamlike quality to them too. And there's a famous story of in Twin Peaks how there was just like somebody in the reflection of one of the shots, and he wound up it was like somebody in the props department. He wound up casting that person to play Bob in Twin Peaks. It's just like it's wild. But I mean that's kind of the fun of filmmaking, is that you can adjust on the fly in most situations.
It's time for a break, but we'll be right back with Dan Berk and Bobby Olsen. Then I will have one quick thing before I go at the end about an exciting development from a friend of the pod. First episode ever, Emily St. James has her debut novel, Woodworking, out. So we will talk about it at the end of the show. Stick around.
Hey, you. Yeah, you with the Gigapet.
Me?
Do you like supporting artist-owned podcasts?
Totally.
What about limited edition gifts, hours and hours of bonus content, and more?
Sounds sweet.
Then stay tuned for Max Fun Drive 2025. www.maximumfun.org on the World Wide Web next week.
Hi, I'm Alexis.
And I'm Ella.
And we're the hosts of Comfort Creatures.
We could spend the next 28 seconds telling you why you should listen, but instead, here's what our listeners have said about our show, because really, they do know best. The show is filled with stories and poems and science and friendship and laughter and tears sometimes, but tears that are from your heart being so filled up with love.
A cozy show about enthusiasm for animals of all kinds, real and unreal. If you greet the dog before the person walking them, or wander around the party looking for the host's cat, this podcast is for you.
So come for the comfort and stay for Alexis's wild story about waking up to her cat giving birth on top of her. So if that sounds like your cup of tea
or coffee, Ella, we're not all Brits,
then join us
every Thursday at MaximumFun.org.
I'm 39, so I'm firmly rooted millennial, and I definitely grew up with Bill and Ted. And, talking about, which were a bit on 90s cinema earlier, I wanted to hear about what, your guys' first contact with the Bill and Ted movies, perhaps Bogus Journey specifically, and just, what does it do for you guys as two folks who were going to go on to make movies of their own one day, to grow up steeped in movies like a Bill and Ted, and movies like that really, really tangible adventure or fantasy and science fiction stuff, action, Steven Seagal movies, Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, Dolph Lundgren movies, where these are just guys kicking the shit out of each other for the most part, with not the most elaborate fight choreography you've ever seen, but you are really watching two guys get into it kind of time. How was that as a seed for you guys as future filmmakers yourselves?
Yeah. I mean, Bill and Ted's, I certainly watched Excellent Adventure first. And that was as it should be, was my buddy Marshall's basement, it was a rental basement watch. I don't think we were not getting high yet. I don't think we were at that age, but we may as well have been. We were probably high on Cheeto dust.
Probably drinking Surge.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, for sure. But I think seeing a movie like that was really instructive. And also around this time, I was super into Monty Python and stuff, into farce comedy. And I think at an early age, being kind of immersed in these really audacious genre blends was very, very instructive for me as I kind of developed. And I didn't know I wanted to be a filmmaker that early, but I think at some deep level within me, I was building this kind of sense of self as a future artist. And seeing that movies could do that was just oh my God, that's so much fun. And Bobby and I have yet to really flex our farce muscles. And I'm excited to one day be able to. We will make a really, really funny, outrageous farce at some point. But yeah, that I think for me was one of those foundational bricks of okay, this is like the stupidest movie and I fucking love it. And like, how do I do this?
Yeah. We always talk about wanting to like one day make like the like American version of RRR and just have it be like have it be like George Washington and like Ben Franklin and like, you know, Abraham Lincoln are all like best friends,
the
like
platonic
fighting crime.
romance, friendship
like,
romance.
Just the timelines don't even match up.
Like, right now.
Exactly. We're on it. We're on it. But Bogus Journey, I like was obsessed with as a kid, and Excellent Adventure I have seen I think once. I think I saw it one time, but I've seen Bogus Journey like a billion times.
Bogus Journey is the one that I went back to a lot as well.
And I don't know why. I think at the time, like, you know, I was just really drawn to like big performances.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with Jim Carrey. Anything that Jim Carrey did, I was just like, you know, I would go and do like Jim Carrey impersonations for my grandmother and stuff.
I don't remember. Maybe it was fourth grade that I spent an entire year in the cafeteria at school doing It's Not Snowflake reenactments of Ace Ventura.
Snowflake. Here, Snowflake. I've got a little snack for you.
I have this old, I gotta find it sometime. My mom was the best. We had this old like camcorder, and she would like make these little videos with me and my sister, and we did like we made like The Mask 2 before the Mask 2 actually came out and was a movie, and it's the silliest thing in the world, but it's so funny. Just like what we had these like green masks that we would like put on our face and then be like, oh. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, there'd be like a cut and we'd be like 3 inches to the left, but with like a painted green face all of a sudden. And like, it was just the silliest shit. But like, I think it's the same thing with Bill and Ted's, because, you know, like Alex Winter and Keanu are just like, they are going all out with these performances.
Yeah.
Like they're so caricatured and like, and it looks so fun. And that's one of my favorite part about this movie is that the robot versions of them act like them even when they're like off the clock, you know, like they're still just doing that. And I love that, like, you know, Nostromo or whatever his name is, DeNostro, like that he like that he's annoyed with them throughout, where he's like, I fucking hate it. Like I made them, but like, God damn it, are they annoying?
Now, what is your mission?
First, we totally kill Bill and Ted. Yeah. Then we take over their lives. Then we utterly destroy them. Then at the Battle of the Bands, we give the speech they were gonna give, except totally different.
And thus a new future is born. A great future, eh?
Don't tell us, Duder. You programmed us. He's totally a robot. So are you, dude. Well, we're total metalheads.
Do shut up.
That like they have, despite their like murderous programming, like really positive attitudes throughout. Even when they're about to be killed by the good robot us's, they're like, oh, this is gonna be sick. Like right before they get their heads punched off.
Say hello to Station's creation. Good robot Bill and Ted. Dude, we may have met our match. Kudos to you, good human us's. Catch you later, Bill and Ted. Catch you later, Bill and Ted.
That was my biggest laugh in the movie when robots are like, we're going to kill you. And they're like, what are you talking about? And they show them their metal abs. And then all 4 of them do the guitar. I was like, this is
like none of them can
outrageous.
deny like how metal it is to be like killed by robot versions of yourselves. It's just great. Yeah. I also, just in general, just a big shout out to Joss Ackland, the actor who plays the bad guy, who was like also like the South African consulate guy in Lethal Weapon 2. That guy was cooking during this like whole time period. Like
He really
that
was.
guy is just incredible. I think he died like 2 years ago. So again, R.I.P.
Leaves behind an incredible body of work. It's like when you see Michael Ironside pop up in anything in the
Oh, yeah.
1990s,
Yes.
and you were like, there was only one Michael Ironside.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, and to bring it back, I wanted to get back to the point of actors for a moment, because I felt like I got to see in Novocaine, I felt like I got to see Amber Midthunder do more. Like, obviously, Prey fucking rules. Because I feel like we know Amber Midthunder as an ass kicker and a steely resolve. But we get to see her as a love interest in this, and we get to see her as kind of a bitch in this. And so I was really glad to see an array of her within this movie. And then also, I was so taken by the one big scene that Ray Nicholson gets in Smile 2. And
Oh my God,
I walked out, like, for the way that movie just destroyed me completely, I walked out of there thinking about him in his one big scene, I think, more than anything else. And then watching him stretch that across, like, more of a character in Novocaine, I was captivated by him. And I wanted to talk to you about just like bringing performances out, like these actors that you got to work with. I think this is like a great actors movie, actually.
Yeah, I mean, luckily we got, we always try to fight for and don't always get a lot of rehearsal time. And so in this case, we were able to get them in there, a couple weeks earlier than maybe they normally would have been. And so we got to spend a lot of time just, like rehearsing these scenes, finding those characters, working on like the, I'm just going to try not to spoil anything in the movie. But like, but I think in both cases, they were, Amber, we had seen in Prey and just loved. We saw that, we got to see it at the DGA theater, so we actually saw that movie on the big screen. And it's a fucking shame that it wasn't like that everybody didn't get to see it that way. But she's awesome in that. But obviously, a lot of that movie is like she's not talking. Like it's just her on her own, or her and the dog, and like all this stuff. And so it was just like really awesome to see like what she was capable of, just in terms of being like somebody who you can't take your eyes off of on screen, and like seeing her kind of like fall for him and vice versa, and their chemistry and how different they are, because like she is just has this like badass persona that like Jack is the opposite of, where Jack is a self-professed floppy boy, he calls himself. And so like, seeing them just work off one another was incredible. And then Ray was like, Ray came in, we were not really familiar with Ray. We saw we saw his audition tape, and we didn't know it meant like Nicholson, like Jack Nicholson's son. Like we were just like, oh, this guy, and he just killed his audition.
I think he's one of my favorite ascending talents. I am mesmerized by him.
It's a lot like Jack, where you have these like physical tools that are just like, where a lot of people like get on about the whole like Nepo baby thing or whatever, but like one of the parts of that is like usually people are famous for a reason. They look a certain way, the camera loves them because their eyes are big, or they have a cool like forehead, or they have good eyebrows. And like both of those guys like have these traits from their star parents that you just see. You kind of see that Ray has these like eyes and these eyebrows that just like they just work, and like it and like and his ability to be really funny while also scary, I think is like that is unique. I think it's really easy to be arch, He
is a rangy man, and watching him in this movie, I was like, he could kill anything or anyone. I would put this guy against anyone, and they're not coming out alive. Like, I was in it with him.
That was certainly the intention there. And also the same thing, we said it about Jack, but it is true of Amber and Ray as well. Like, such incredible actual people, and like we've become such close friends with all of them, and like we're such a happy family. And it's just like, I don't know, we feel like you can see that in the performance, like you can tell. And that's a big reason why Amber and Jack's chemistry is so phenomenal because they became like awesome friends and were hanging out all the time. And like, you get that when you have like these really kind people who are being really generous to each other as scene partners and being really cerebral about the process. And so, yeah, we just got so lucky with that. And let's not forget Jacob Babylon as well.
Oh yeah, I mean a perfect compliment. In this role.
I mean, the movie is about it's a love story in like 5 directions. You know, like we think the platonic love between Nate and Roscoe is really, really important too. And yeah, Jacob just did an incredible job with that. So.
You guys, I had such a blast with Novocaine. I went and saw it on the Paramount lot, which I never got into the Paramount lot. It was very exciting. I was laughing out loud in that room. This movie
amazing.
hit
Thank
me.
you.
If anybody out there, if you saw the trailer for Novocaine, you're like, I think that might be my thing. It is. If you had a sense that it is, it absolutely is, and it's going to deliver completely on its promise. Station to you both. Thank you so much,
Jordan.
to Dan and Bobby for coming on the show today. I so appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having us.
And just to add, Station. Yes.
Station.
Yes.
Station.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Jordan. This was a blast.
Thank you so much to Dan Berk, Bobby Olsen, and Nala for a wonderful conversation. Station. You can watch Novocaine at a theater near you. I had so much fun with this movie. Seriously, go see it in a theater. The violence is super. The fights are great. Jack Quaid, God, just charms me every time. He has got the just exact right amount of Meg Ryan in that DNA. Just can't help but give in to the guy. And so yeah, please go see it with friends, laugh and yuck it up in the theater. And now, before I head out, I have one quick thing before I go. I mentioned it up top. Emily St. James, who is our very first guest on Feeling Seen, and her episode about Midsommar remains one of my favorite we have ever done. She has her debut novel coming out. It is called Woodworking. It is from Crooked Media Reads, the new book imprint from Crooked Media. And I went and saw her do a Q&A with Crooked's John Lovett at a book event here in Los Angeles. And just, I mean, go back and listen to that first episode. Nobody better to sit and listen wax intellectual about any topic in the most just delightful and wry and sensitive way than Emily St. James. This book, Woodworking, as she explained in the Q&A, this was a new term to me, woodworking is the process of a trans person fully sublimating into their trans identity, leaving behind their past life completely and living as their trans self without acknowledgement of a prior history, and perhaps creating like a whole fresh backstory and life to tell people to not share their dead name, their prior life itself. The story it's a dual coming of age tale, really. Emily hails from South Dakota, and this is the story of a teacher in her mid-30s who is recently divorced and recently out to herself as a trans woman. Not necessarily out in the community, but out to herself. But she finds a confidant in the only out trans person in town, which is a teenage girl who attends the high school where she teaches. And so it is the coming of age of our teacher. It is the coming of age of our student. It is the student in the position of being the educator for the elder who is in front of her, but who is new to this life that she is stepping into, and she sort of reluctantly has to take on the role of guide. And, you know, a story of unlikely friendship, the power of love and discovery within friendship. And of course, things get challenging when, you know, the town starts to have thoughts and critiques of this kind and gentle connection between teacher and student. But it's a book about all of us living as we are and living in the truth of the total truth of who and what we are. No more details. That's, you know, it's a book. There's a lot to it. You got to get into it. The book, there's always more details in the movie. So yeah, it's Emily. It's Emily St. James, friend of the show. In addition to Emily having Woodworking out, You can also see her work actually on season 3 of Yellow Jackets. Her and her writing partner / wife, Libby Hill, have written for season 3 of Yellow Jackets. You can take in their and Emily's work all over the place right now. We're all better for it. And that, excitingly, is our show. You can keep up with us wherever you get your podcasts. Hit that follow button wherever you're listening to get every new episode in your feed. That and so much more, because we are just days away from the Max Fun Drive. You're not going to want to miss this one. Follow us on Instagram at Feeling Seen Pod. We are on Blue Sky, me and the show. You can search Feeling Seen or Jorcru, Jorcru. It's me there and on Twitter. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. The show is produced by Danielle Huesius. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun Station.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows,
supported directly by you.